Hello, hello, everybody, as we're all getting logged on here. It's fun to be back with you all after a couple month hiatus on my maternity leave. I've missed seeing all these little names and faces and boxes. And I think I was remembering this morning, I think Water Windows was happening on the day that I ended up having my baby. So that was kind of a fun little, I was not thinking about all of you at that time, but I'm really excited to be back joining you all here. So we'll give it a couple of minutes here just to let those later logins get going here. But yeah, we're so excited to have Jared Smith joining us today. Sometimes these guests I almost get like I feel like I have a celebrity here, and this is one of those days where it's like
I do not feel like that one bit, but
I'm sweating over here. No.
Oh, gee.
No, we are so excited to have him join us. And yeah, I think we'll just wait we've still got some people popping on, so we'll get as many people here as we can. Just as a reminder to everybody that we record all of these meetings. We have them on YouTube and send them out afterwards as well. And so we will be sending that out in the next couple of days. And you'll be able to either send it to others who weren't able to join us today, or watch anything a second time too, if you would like to. So I think since we're a few minutes after here, we are ready to get started. So more formally to everybody, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us here on the very first day of February. It's crazy how January is simultaneously goes so fast, but also feels so incredibly long in the winter here. But my name is Paige Price. I'm the program manager here at the Waterloo Community Foundation and the host for these monthly Windows on Waterloo presentations. And today we are so fortunate to have Dr. Jared Smith, the Waterloo Schools Superintendent, here with us. This is his first year in the district, and we are so pleased to be able to have him with us today to get to know him a little bit better and just hear about what is going on in our schools. It's something that impacts every one of us, and so we all have a vested interest in what's going on in the district. And so with that, I will turn things over to Jared. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, Paige, for the invite here. I'm excited to kind of share a few things about what's going on in our district, which, like you said, you did a great job. It impacts like almost all of us in this meeting, this chat room here to one extent or the other. So yeah, I might just spend a few minutes kind of just giving my like journey to this position. And then I'll probably share a few minutes about what kind of where our focus is as a district. Maybe highlight a few things that have changed even in the first 6 months here. And then I definitely want to answer any questions you have about the school district. Does that sound like a good plan? All right. I'm seeing some
Yes, that's perfect.
I'm seeing some head nods, so that's good. So actually a lot of you, I'm looking at the names that are coming in here, like a lot of you either I know already, I've met you in different meetings, or quite honestly, I might have grown up with you to some extent. So I actually grew up in Waterloo. And so coming back to this position, I never in a million years as a student at West High School, graduating in 2000, would have ever thought like I would be back in this position as a superintendent of schools. Never in my wildest dreams. But yeah, so I grew up in Waterloo. I went to Kingsley, and then I went to Hoover, and then I went to West High. Was involved in a lot of activities growing up, and had some siblings, three younger siblings, three full younger siblings, then a half younger sibling, who all grew up in the Waterloo schools as well. So I just have been in the community for a lot of my life. And so that's definitely been helpful coming back here for this role. Quickly after graduating from West High School, went to UNI for elementary middle level education. And then I was one of those people, if you've ever been there, having spent most of my life in the Cedar Valley to that point, was like, I got to get out of here for a little bit. I got to experience something different. So took a wild leap of faith and actually taught in the Sarasota County Public Schools, Sarasota, Florida, for a few years as a high school math teacher and a coach. Really enjoyed my time down there. People, you look outside today, it's about 15 degrees out. People are wondering, like, why in the world would you ever move back? But I started missing some of my family, my friends, and like some of just the Midwest values and Midwest weather, I guess you could say. I love the fall, and you never really get a fall in Florida. So I don't know. I just kind of felt like moving back. So I actually taught Chicago Public Schools for a period of time. And then I got into school administration. My first administration job was in Fort Dodge, about an hour and a half straight west on Highway 20. Then I came back to Waterloo as an assistant principal at East High School, where really learned just learned a lot about the Waterloo schools, learned a lot about leadership. And this is the story I always tell, is during my time as an assistant principal at East High, I applied for 3 different principal jobs in this very district. And all 3 times I did not get those jobs. And you can go 2 different directions, right? As you're moving up the whatever professional field you're in, and you kind of get that rejection, you can either go 2 ways, right? You can either like pout and mope and say, woe is me, and just kind of give up. Or you could say, you know what, I'm going to use this as motivation, and I'm going to work harder, and I'm going to prove people that they may, that I should have been the right pick. And so from that moment on, I went back to school. I went back to get my PhD at Iowa State and really worked as hard as I could to improve my leadership. Listening to people, meeting with mentors, reading, writing as much as I could do. So eventually became a high school principal in Muscatine, which is down by the Quad Cities. It's a really big height. People don't know much about Muscatine High School. It's about the same size as West High School. It's about 1,600 kids, about 200 employees. And it was a high school principal there, became a superintendent at South Tama County, which is Tama, Toledo, which is about an hour south of here. And when Dr. Lindeman announced retirement about a year ago today, immediately people reached out to me and said, hey, Jared, have you thought about applying for the Waterloo job? And when I got those initial messages, I thought there's no way. It's too big of a system. It's huge. There's 20 schools. There's 10,000 kids. Like I'm still pretty young. Like I haven't got things figured out. Like why would I do that? But after having some conversations with a few mentors, including my dad, actually, was some really good conversations about like, Jared, like there's a lot that could be, it's a challenge, but wouldn't have you ever back down to a challenge first and foremost? And second, wouldn't it be cool to come back and give back to the community and work in the community that you were raised? So literally on the last day that the application was open for this job, I put my application in and was very fortunate enough to go through the process. And I came back here like literally almost a year ago today, interviewed for this job. And here's the story. Another story I tell is went through that day. I thought I really did well in the interviews, right? We've all been there. We've had interviews before, right? Maybe they've been small groups. Like this was a whole day and a half worth of interviews. I was exhausted when I left, but I really felt like, okay, I crushed it. I did great. Like I had people laughing. I had people almost in tears. I just felt like the interviews went really well. But they sat here. I left the WCC, the Waterloo Career Center, at 4:00. And they were like, don't worry. Like we'll let the person who gets the job, we're going to let them know after this board meeting. The board meeting starts at 5:00. We'll let you know. So I drove home. I'm feeling good. All right, I got this. And like 5:30 went by, 6:00 went by, 7:00 went by. And I was like, okay, I thought I was going to get the job, but maybe somebody else came in and really did well and they went a different direction. So like 8:00, and again, granted, the school board started meeting at 5:00, so it's 3 hours in. And I was like, okay, they didn't pick me. Apparently, you kind of like start defending yourself. Like they wouldn't know talent if they hit it in the face, one of those things. I haven't told that to the board, so keep I don't, do you have any board members in here? I don't think we do. Okay, just keep that between us if you don't mind. But like literally 9 o'clock, no word. I gave up, put my cell phone on the charger. I'm going to bed. I was frustrated, got a phone call at like 9:30, and they said, "Hey, how would you like to be the superintendent of schools in Waterloo?" And I was like, my jaw dropped, like full circle, student, assistant principal, now the superintendent. It was a crazy feeling. So yeah, I accepted the job pretty much on the spot and started working in July. And it's been actually, I started working in July technically, but it's been literally almost a year's worth of transition of getting to this point. When you become a superintendent or even a principal or whatever role it is in a school district, you're almost immediately starting to build relationships, starting to make connections, starting to reach out to people. And quite honestly, that's what I've been doing for the last year is really trying to understand our system, understand the community, reach out to people, just be a team player, be collaborative, and really just do whatever I can to help out the students and families of Waterloo. So that's kind of a very, usually when I tell that story, I do a lot of public professional speaking. Usually that story takes about 20-25 minutes. So I really put it down in about 10 minutes. But I love telling, the background, like the struggles. Like a lot of people look at people in our positions, and I'm seeing a lot of influential community members. They see like, oh, they're in this position. Life must have been super easy for them. They must have had straight to the top. And for me, it has not been that way. It has been like grind. It has been work hard. It has been, prove people wrong, have that chip on your shoulder. And that's kind of like the story I love to tell to a lot of our kids and to a lot of our staff is, we work in a blue collar community. Like not everything is handed to the students and families of Waterloo. For some families it is maybe, but for a lot of families it isn't. And so like when I see students that are working hard and families that are making to the next step and working their way up, like I see a lot of myself in them. I tell this story a lot too. As a young student, when my parents divorced, I was on free and reduced lunches for most of my life, right? My mom had never went to college and she had to go back to work, and to make ends meet, she was a waitress at Applebee's on University, right when Applebee's opened. Like, I don't know what year that was. It might have been like 1990, but she was a waitress. And then when Lone Star opened over by Menards, which is now no longer there, it's Perkins, but she was the waitress at Lone Star. So like, I know the struggles that our students go through. And I feel like that's what really helps me in this position is understanding like what a lot of our students and staff members and community members and families are going through, is that having that perspective really helps me in this position. I feel like I'm talking a lot here. I guess I just keep going with this, Aaron Page, just keep going. Okay. So they asked me to share what's going on in the district. And I was kind of losing a little bit of sleep on this because I'm like, gosh, I'm used to meeting in person. I'm used to like doing some things where we're kind of having some discussions, but this is a different setting for me. But I thought the best thing for me would be to just show you our strategic plan, which some of you are like, oh, a strategic plan, but I'm going to kind of just tell what we're doing as a district that ties into the strategic plan. That will really give me an idea of where our focus is at. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it works here. Aaron and Paige, shoot me straight. If it's not working, just let me know here. Okay, share screen. Okay, can you see that? Does it look good?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, so when you come into a big, okay, let me just kind of set the stage here. Some people are very familiar with the school district. Some people don't know much about the school district. Our school district is a huge system. We've got 1,700 employees. We've got 10,000 students, and we impact about 70,000 people, right? So systems is hugely important. It's a huge learning curve for anybody who comes in this position. So one of the things that we had already set was a strategic plan that had already been established by Dr. Lindemann, the leaders before me. So when you come into a big system, like I said, the 1,700 employees, the 20 buildings, so we don't have everybody on one site, right? We've got 20 different buildings where people are spread out throughout the community. And so how do you make sure we're all marching in the same direction, right? So one thing that we've really tried to focus in on is following up on some of the goals that previous leadership had. And what you've got here is just a one-pager. I love one-pagers. And I write about leadership, I talk about leadership all the time. Like, it's great to have these huge, big plans behind the scenes. That's great. So everybody knows what's going on. But at some point, you've got to have like a one page at a glance, like, here's what we do as a district. So this is what ours is. And quite honestly, as an assistant principal back in 2012, this framework had already been established. This PACE, right? We've got this acronym that we use as PACE, which is People, Achievement, Community, Environment. And so in the Waterloo schools, we really focus on those 4 broad areas. And I'm just going to talk about those 4 broad areas here briefly. And you can see over here, we really worked a lot. Great, huge props to our communication department for taking what I had as a vision in terms of this one-page document and really making it like a reality. But you can see that we focus in on 4 areas. And the first is people. I don't care what organization or business you're part of, like, it comes down to people, right? I say it all the time to our people. I say it all the time is like, you can have the best initiatives. You can have the best business plan. You can have the best, whatever it is. If you don't have the people and the culture figured out, like, forget about it, right? So it's important that we focus on our people. And that's really been one of the biggest focuses that I've had to start. You've probably heard about it. In schools right now, there's a major teaching crisis. It's hard to find teachers. It's hard to find bus drivers. It's hard to find cooks. It's hard to find pretty much everyone. So we've got to be very strategic about making sure that we are always recruiting employees. We're always spreading the news about our open positions. So you can see, so people focusing on recruitment, retainment, and culture kind of ties into that, is a huge focus, not only for us, but I feel like if you're a business leader or you're in leadership, which a lot of you are, like, you've got to be focusing on this in the post-COVID world that we live in. Second, I'm going to go across the way here. A is achievement. And so really, I talk about this a lot. Like, if you are I always try to give the analogies to business world because a lot of you are in business world or deal with sales, right? In the school world, it's hard to find metrics that say, like, are you doing a good job? Like, a lot of people would say, like, have been asking me, Jared, are you doing a good job these first 6 months? It's hard to find metrics that really point to, like, oh yeah, look at our sales, look at our revenue, look at this. Like, we don't have that. So probably the metrics that people look at the most are achievement, right? So we got to make sure that our students are achieving at high levels, and that we're setting them up for the next level, whether it's elementary students setting that up for middle school students setting that up for high school students setting that up for either college or getting some sort of degree or the workforce. So we talk about is, and I'll talk about equity here in a second. Well, let's just talk about it real quick. I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know this. Waterloo is by far one of the most diverse school districts in the state. We are now a majority district, meaning that more than 50% of our students are Black and brown students, are not Caucasian. I think we're up closer to 60%. So we've got to make sure, if we're going to be successful with a diverse group of students, that we've got to be teaching them in ways that are meeting their needs. So we've got a huge focus on increasing equity and achievement. And so one of those big focuses has been, and this is no secret, we've talked about this in the newspaper, we've talked about this on KWWL, is that right now we're seeing that our Caucasian students, our white students are achieving at higher levels than our minority students and our Black and brown students. So what can we do as a district? What can we do to make sure we meet the needs of all students? And that's been a huge focus of ours, is what does that look like? How do we make sure our staff, whether they're fresh out of college or they've been here for 25, 30 years, how do we make sure they are teaching all students in a way that gives them access to achievement? I had to get a drink real quick here. Hold on one second. So achievement is huge, and that encompasses a lot of different things, but we really want to make sure, first and foremost, that when students leave our district, that they are prepared to be successful in life, and we're setting them up to be productive citizens in our community. Speaking of community, next is that C, right? People, achievement. C is community. Develop and utilize communications. I've talked about this. I've written about this. Is we've got to tell our story as a district. Right now, whether we like it or not, a lot of communities, a lot of society mistrusts schools. So if you're on social media, or if you're talking to people at the coffee shop, or if you're reading the newspaper, a lot of what you read about schools right now, whether we like it or not, is negative. So it's up to us. Like, nobody's going to write our story. We've got to get ahead of it. So we absolutely have a focus on telling our story as a school district. I feel very good. We've got a great communications team. We've really built up some leadership in our district to tell our story. But we want to pump out so much positive information to our community, to our parents, to our students, to our staff, that when things do come up, and things will come up, we will have some issue come up in one of our buildings or at one of our events. Something will come up, but we have to have so much positive news that people give us a break, that people trust us, right? So we are focusing on, why should people trust our school? Why should people trust our staff? Not only because we want to make sure our parents feel good about sending their kids here, we also know we live in a world now of school choice. And so why should parents and students why should parents want to send their kids to our school? And a lot of that comes down to trust. Do parents, do communities members trust what we've got going on inside our building? So community engagement, family engagement is huge. You probably, if you follow me at all on like social media or follow any things that I do myself, like I'm always trying to tell our story about the great things that are going on in our buildings. And every single day, and I try to get out to the buildings as much as possible. I think it's important that I'm visible, that I'm engaging with staff. Every time I see like amazing things that are going on, I think it's important that our community knows about it, or else they're going to focus on the negatives, right? So that's community. Last but not least is environment. We've got to have a safe environment first and foremost, but then it comes down to culture. I talked about this a little bit in people, but culture is huge in schools right now. Like, our staff can work wherever they want. Like, teachers have control of the job market. If they don't like it in our district, they're going to go to Cedar Falls. They're going to go to Denver. They're going to go to Waverly. They're going to go somewhere else. No disrespect to those school districts, but we want them here, right? We want the best teachers in our school district. So how do we create an environment where staff love coming to work? And that's difficult these days. It's difficult in schools. I don't care what position you're in, what organization, what business you're in, like loving coming to work and wanting to come to work. That's a challenge. And so how do we make employee-friendly decisions without losing any of the attention on students? And that's what we've been working through, is that idea. So Here, as you're looking at people, achievement, community, environment, there's a reason why we have that in a circle, right? You can see how we've got in this big circle. And here's what I always say is that these four things have to be working together, right? Like if we do these four areas well, they kind of it's almost like it builds momentum on each other, right? And you can think of like a circle and like a kind of like a merry-go-round. I don't know what the right thing would be. We call it a flywheel, which is a very antiquated word, but like you want all these things going momentum, right? And once those all four areas are building on each other and their momentum's building, like it's very hard to stop. So we're really trying to make good decisions in each of those areas day after day after day. And we feel like if we keep doing that, then eventually the momentum grows and we reach a point of breakthrough. So those are really the four areas that we focused on. You can see we've got goals. We've got 6 main goals that we've got across the district. You can read those. I don't want to bore you too much. The recruitment and retention, I've already talked about these things. Narrowing this achievement gap, ensuring success for our students of color, a rigorous and personalized instruction, guaranteeing that instruction, increase family and community engagement, and then that safe and physical learning environment. Those are big things. So when they asked me, when Paige and Aaron said, hey, like, why don't you share a little bit about what's going on? Like my mind immediately went to this document here. So you can kind of see as a district what we've got going on. Now, outside of that, I'm going to stop sharing here. Outside of that, I would say here's where some of the big changes have happened in these first 6 months. And let me say, first and foremost, when you come into a big organization like this, I have found my experience and what I believe to be true is that you don't make sweeping changes right away. Unless things are like literally on fire, like don't make huge changes right away. Take your time to listen, take your time to build relationships, take your time to understand the lay of the land before you make sweeping changes. In the educational world, that's what I've seen. Leaders who come in and make huge changes, whether they make sense or not, a lot of times they don't fare so well, is what I've seen. The people who will come in and authentically listen, understand employee perspectives, and make changes based on not what they see from afar, but what they hear in the trenches, like to me, that is how you get effective change to be made. With that being said, we have made a few changes this first semester. The biggest one that you've probably seen, it was in the newspaper, it was on the news, is dress code. Okay, so dress code's been a huge thing. And some of you might be like, oh, dress code, that's not a big thing. Waterloo was, and I forget exactly what year it started, but Waterloo was, up until this year, we were the only public school district in the state that had what I would say strict dress code for students. So students were expected to wear like khakis or dress pants and very plain like polos or dress shirts. And so immediately, once I took the job, I literally had hundreds of messages from parents, community members, staff members, and students saying, hey, could you please look at changing the dress code? And so as I got that feedback, there's like 3 ways I could go with it. One is like, no, we're not doing anything. I don't think it's that big a deal. Let's just move on. We're okay. That's one on the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is like, okay, sounds good. Let's change it. Let's pull the plug. Let's rip the carpet and let's just change it. That's the other end of the spectrum. My belief was that we need to have proof. If we're going to make a decision that impacts 70,000 people, we probably should have a little bit of data, right? A little bit of feedback. So what we did right away in August was we sent a survey to our community and to our students, to our staff, and said, what do you think about the dress code? Should we change it or not? And we had 4,500 responses, and 87% of the responders said that we should change the dress code. To me, that was like the impetus for taking this to a community forum. That data said, yes, we need to look into this. And so we took that to a committee. The committee met, I think, 5 times over the course of October and November, and came up with a new dress code for second semester, which we just started a month ago, which basically, long story short, allowed our students to wear what I would consider to be very typical clothing of other public school districts in our state. So that was a very big change. But I also feel like the data warranted the change. It wasn't made without data backing the decision, and a very good process of generating buy-in from employees, leaders, community members, and students. So that was probably the biggest change that we've seen. The other change that I wanted to kind of comment on a little bit is when people think about a school district, they immediately think about teachers, right? Rightfully so. Teachers are the ones that do all the magic in the classroom. However, in the Waterloo Community School District, we've got 1,700 employees. Of the 1,700 employees, half are teachers and half are support staff. And I should say half are teachers and what I would say like our salaried employees or our certified employees, and the other half are our hourly or our support staff. Where I'm going at with this is that much like the businesses that you run or you're a part of, like COVID has forced school districts to change how we do work. Meaning like, how can we do work better, more efficiently, and also meet the changing needs of our workforce? So one thing we've really looked at more is how do we give more autonomy and more flexibility to the work of our employees? So one big thing that we looked at, and we gathered data on this, was can we look at more work from home options for our employees? And a lot of days in schools, you got students in front of you. Like there is no work from home option, right? You got kids in front of you. We do a little bit of virtual teaching, but not much. Most of our teaching is still face-to-face with our students. But what about the times when our students are not in front of us? What about the employees who are not working directly with students? What we've done is we made a shift in how we treat work from home days. So over winter break, for example, tradition has been that the employees come into the offices, go into buildings, and do their work from the office. We asked for feedback on that. We said, hey, if you guys like doing this, great. If you prefer to have the option of working from home or coming into the office, let's meet your needs. Overwhelmingly, our staff, and we're talking 300 staff, probably 200 to 300 staff, that we are giving more work from home options to those employees when applicable, when the day allows for it. Again, the reason for that is twofold. One, the current employees that we already have, like we need to take steps to make sure that we give them autonomy. The research shows that employees like having choice. Whether the job gets done personally, I don't care how you get the job done. If you get the job done in your cubicle or in your office, great. If you get the job done from the comfort of your couch in your pajamas, I don't care. Just get the job done, right? So that's the first reason. The second reason is as we're competing with other school districts, as we're competing with other professions for employees, we've got to make sure that we create a staff-friendly environment. So we're really trying hard to listen to our staff, to give every employee a voice, to ask for their feedback, and to really make decisions that reflect the new age of education and new age of business and the way we do work. So I would say if you're looking at the two biggest changes that the Waterloo Community School District has made, maybe the pivots that we've made has been with some less the dress code for students and to some extent staff. And also, how do we avoid, and again, I'm not saying that this has not been done before. These things have been done before. These are just bigger pivots we've taken this year compared to the past, is how do we make some tweaks to the way we do work that really meet the needs of our staff? So I guess that's what I had off the top of my head. I kind of I feel like I'm rambling. I'm used to seeing, when I talk in groups, I can see facial expressions, I can see laughs, I can see whatever it is. With you guys, it's a little bit trickier, so I feel like I'm just talking to a screen here. But hey, I've seen a few people give me some smiles and give me some positive reinforcement, so that feels good. So Aaron, Paige, I don't know, do you have any questions for me? I always feel like schools get a lot of questions when we come to these things, and Aaron is nodding her head emphatically. So I'm hoping some questions are lining up, and fire them away as long as they're, just fire them away.
Yes, you're doing a great job. I think that we've all been captivated by what you're talking about. So I know it can be tough to talk to the screen, but you're doing great. And I apologize, I forgot to say at the top of our meeting here that if you have questions, you can put those into the chat and I will ask them to Jared. Sorry, I'm a little rusty, so I forgot my script there at the beginning. But if you have any questions, throw them in the chat and we will get to them. Or if you want to unmute and ask them verbally, we can do that too. But we do have one from earlier in your presentation here, Jared, about if you could elaborate on the anticipated impact of the voucher bill on the Waterloo schools.
Yeah. Hey, start off with the really tricky one here. Okay. So that's a great question. And that's a lot of people's mind. I'm two things I am. One, I'm a very transparent person, maybe to a fault. Two, I'm a very optimistic person, maybe to a fault. First and foremost, and again, this gets tricky because in a lot of educational circles, you're either public or you're private school. You're so far left and right, like I can't even, I don't deal well with that. I deal with like what's best for kids, right? I want to do what's best for kids of Waterloo. I think the Waterloo School District has so many cool opportunities we have endless opportunities. I didn't even talk about the Career Center, which was a big fault of mine. I probably should talk about the Career Center a little bit and the huge expansion project we have going on behind Central. I feel like, yes, it's been a hot topic that has been coming up. And what does this mean for the Waterloo schools? I still feel like the proof is in the pudding. I still feel like we will give everything we can, the best opportunities for students to be successful in our school district. And if a parent or families feel like there's a better option somewhere else in the community, then great. Then I'm okay with that. I have many friends, my family grew up in the Catholic schools. I myself went in, I was at a private school for a few years before I went to the public schools. So I'm not going to be one of those people who, right or wrong, some people might say I'm wrong. I'm not going to really put down other places and say that's not a good place for our students to go. I will say that I feel like we've got as good as education as anyone for what we're offering in our buildings and what's to come. And we got some really cool things. Like I said, we're renovating Central as we speak, Central Middle School. We've got a brand new, huge building behind Central that's going to best meet the needs of our students. So I feel like we got some really good things going on. So I guess you're asking me, how's it going to impact the Waterloo schools? I think we'll see some impact. I do. But I also think we need to focus on what we can control, which is, we have kids that drop out at high school every year. We've got kids who open enroll outside the Waterloo schools and go to other districts. Let's focus on those kids first, and we'll let the political lawmakers figure some things out. But let's focus on what we can control. And I think if we focus on giving the best educational opportunity to our kids and keep our kids and families here, the rest will take care of itself.
I think that's great. Thank you for addressing that. We figured that would come up because it's been such a timely topic, and appreciate your perspective on that. Another question that came in are, what are the biggest challenges facing the district right now?
Yeah, I feel like I kind of hit on these a little bit. Staffing has been hard to come by. We're being very proactive. I've really been working with our HR department on we know we're going to have openings next year. Every year for the last 20 years, we're going to have a number of teachers or employees will retire or they will leave. Let's anticipate that and let's just post our positions and let the dominoes fall how they fall. So we're really being proactive with our recruitment of new employees. A lot of it too is every district's dealing with this, but more the urban districts like Waterloo are dealing with this. Is during COVID, our students fell behind. They fell behind academically, they fell behind social emotionally. How do we get those kids caught up? We know that some of our numbers, when you look at academic achievement, when you look at graduation rate, when you look at some of those other indicators of success, we know those went down. So how do we get those back up to pre-pandemic levels and even exceed those levels? We're struggling with attendance right now. There's, there's a trickle down effect, right? We've got some adults who haven't gone back to work, right? It's hard to find jobs, or it's hard to fill jobs. We've also got some students who are struggling to come back to school. And so how do we get those kids re-engaged and feeling good about coming to school? So I would say challenges right now are re-engaging our students who maybe for the last 2 years have not been engaged, getting them caught back up, as well as making sure that we're filling all of our open positions and we're only as good, like I said, we're only as good as the teachers and the staff who are working with kids. So we've got to get high quality people working our buildings.
Great. Can you talk a little bit more about the expansion at the Career Center and kind of an update on the renovations at Central and
Sure.
What's going on over there and what the goal is?
Yeah, great question. So I hope if you haven't been to the WCC, the Waterloo Career Center, I highly encourage you to pop over there. I think Amy and Jeff were both in the meeting at one point. I'm just going to scroll through. Maybe they're not in here anymore, but
they are. We're among friends here.
Oh, we're among. Oh, there. Yeah. So Amy, who was and Jeff are waving at us there. They would be more than willing to take a break in their day and just kind of show you around. I know they would love to show you the programs that we have. So first and foremost, if you haven't been in the WCC, I encourage you to go check it out. Second, and a lot of this was done well before I got here, but there was definitely a need to renovate Central Middle School. Some of you, I can remember going to Central Middle School, as a third grader, going Optimist basketball, right? And playing in that gym, those classrooms that I saw back in the 1990 are still the classrooms that we have today. So there was absolutely a need to renovate that to 2023, right? So currently Central Middle School is being renovated into a wonderful, beautiful new middle school. And the room's going to be amazing. And I'm just super excited for our students. Now, how this all worked together was there was also a vision to build, to add on to the WCC and build this huge, I forget the square footage exactly, but it's a massive building that is right behind the WCC that is going to really meet the career technical, we call it CTE, the needs of our students. And when you go in there, and I've shared, if you don't follow me on Facebook, I'm always sharing these photos, and so is our school district, so you can see all of the progress. But there's 5 huge, what we call bays, which are areas that we can teach students that some of the really the cool programs. And Jeff and Amy are gonna be like, dude, he's totally biffing how to say these things. But some of the cool programs that we can offer, one is construction. We've got this huge area that down the road, students are gonna learn how to build, how do you build a house? How do you build these different large structures? So we got some really cool, big, massive area. It kind of looks like an open warehouse that we're going to section off into different areas where kids can learn different skills of different trades. Beyond that, which is really cool, is we've got, I want to say 16 classrooms 8 up on the second floor, 8 on the first floor. We're going to be able to offer classes, whether it's career focused classes or even maybe some of our like core classes, where kids can get some of their core classes out of the way in those classrooms, and they can go and do some of their career focused work in those Bay areas. So it's a massive building. If you've ever been in the WCC, it's kind of it's about the same size as that building. So and what the really cool thing is it looks like my favorite part is there's like a glass walkway that takes you from old WCC to new WCC, and it oversees Memorial Field, which is just like a really cool, like full circle, right? You got Memorial Field, which we've been playing there for years. You can see it. It's a beautiful view. But it also like bridges us to the gap, or bridges us to the future. So long story short, Central is being renovated right now. The students at Central are actually back in the WCC expansion. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students are back there. They're going to be taught there for the next year. And we've got a really cool setup back there, a really great setup. Our facilities team did a great job of setting those kids up to set up the classrooms back there. But those kids will be in Central Middle School, be in that building for a year. So they will be there until January 1st, 2024. And at that point, the Central kids will move back into their new middle school. And we will be putting the finishing touches on the WCC expansion, which will be ready to open for fall of 2024. I don't know if all that made sense. Jeff and Amy, if you want to add anything, you certainly can. These guys are the experts on those two, on kind of the work that's going on back there.
I think you did a great job, Jared. You nailed it. 60,000 square foot is the addition. 80,000 is the original WCC. So 140,000 square foot.
Wow, that's incredible. All right, our next question here, I'm just going to read it because I don't want to get anything wrong here. So first, hi, Superintendent Smith. We're very happy to have you here. I love your emphasis on building relationships within the community. To that end, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about implementing restorative justice practices in the Waterloo School District, as we've seen some other districts around the state do with great success, specifically Cedar Rapids and Des Moines. So the person who's asking this is a chief juvenile public defender in Waterloo with a lot of interest in restorative processes. And so she did say she'd be happy to offer any assistance in that. But do you have any thoughts on restorative justice practices?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'm not going to claim to be an expert at restorative justice. But I will say the way that we handle students has absolutely changed as well. I always say, like 10 years ago, as an assistant principal at East, like I dealt with a lot of behavior situations. I dealt with how do we best set the student up after they make a mistake? How do we best set them up for success? And I think that has changed dramatically in 10 years, let alone like 30 years ago, when we would just simply suspend a kid, or we would shoot. Some of you might have got, paddled or lashings or something, I don't know what that was. Things have changed. The way we interact, the way we teach students to try to get them to behave or to be successful in a classroom setting or with their peers has absolutely changed. So I know, and let me be honest, we made a transition. When you ask that question, my mind immediately goes to our department, which our student services department. We've gone through a transition there as well. We promoted the principal from Carver Middle School to that position. Her name is Sheena Kennedy, and her and I philosophically are totally on the same page. And some of those restorative practices that you're talking about are very much at the forefront of our mind. It takes a while for us to like wrap our head around the systems and see how we can make that work. But I feel like we're already seeing that to some extent in our school district. Now, again, I'm not an expert, so I might not be speaking the same exact language that you're asking me about, but we're finding how can we, within our buildings, how can we find maybe if a student is having a tough day or had a tough week, how can we find something in that school where they can still be successful, where they can still get the education without saying you've got to go home for a day or two, or just giving some punitive, giving some sort of punitive consequence to them. Another thing that you may or may not know is that the Waterloo schools have not, and this is extreme, but we've not expelled a student for a very long time. I forget how long it's been, but we don't expel students. So, and again, expel is an extreme, but we are looking for every option to keep that kid engaged before we say we've had enough of you, right? So I have this, Sheena and I talk about this all the time. How can we, if a student, maybe the classroom setting is not perfect for them, how do we create another situation for them to be successful? And we want to be creative. We want to be creative with our students, because now that we know like how virtual learning can work, now that we know how remote learning can work, how can we give them a variety of options that will best meet their needs? So I don't know if I gave your answer, because I'm not familiar for sure with like the Cedar Rapids model or the Des Moines model, but I will say that we're speaking the same language, and we're looking at all options to help our students be successful.
Awesome. We also had somebody ask, kind of looping back to the Career Center, if agriculture studies are included in the Career Center. Maybe that's something you need to pass out.
No, but I think that's, Jeff, you want to speak on that? I got a few ideas, but I'll let the expert speak first, then I got a few extra ideas.
Absolutely. One of the programs we're looking at bringing in is ag science, and horticulture. And actually, a proposal or plan as part of the expansion is, once those programs are in place for the 24-25 school year, to actually have a greenhouse that would connect to the western half of the WCC expansion. So if you when you come out there, you should all come out there and visit this. When you go all the way down to the end of the hallway, which is the crossing the bridge that Jared talked about, that overlooks Memorial, on the very end of the bottom part of the expansion of the 8 classrooms on bottom is our ag science and horticulture. There'll be a connecting doorway out to a greenhouse, and we're going to do all things agriculture science related, which would include farming, but it's also, about 95% of ag is truly related to the science of everything related to it, from ethanol to, all sorts of different hybrids of different things, FDA inspections. So definitely part of it, as is the horticulture piece, hydroponics, and things like that. So very excited about that component. We don't have a true, I would say, ag type program in any of our schools, but it's coming in 2 years.
What I will add Jeff definitely nailed that. Thanks for giving all the specifics. I will say, like, that is one thing as being an administrator in other districts, that ag is there's a lot of districts that have great things going on with ag programs, with FFA, with forget what the other, but either way, that's something that I'm super excited about. Being in this community, the history that we have with John Deere, the history that we have, I'm just super excited to get our kids involved with that in years moving forward.
Awesome. It looks like we had a really positive comment about what's going on at the Career Center. So that is great. We have another one about a potential partnership with something that's happening at Alternatives. And I think the best way to address that one would be to connect you guys to talk more specifically about that kind of thing. And then I see we have a question here that the district has renovated most of the buildings within the district in the last couple of decades. It seems like there is room for improvement at our high schools. Do you see improvement of these buildings on the radar? And that was prefaced with risky question. So
like I said, to a fault, I'm transparent. I feel like one of my strengths is communication. And I feel like if we're not telling our story, somebody else will. meaning like, I don't mind sharing as much kind of as I know at this point, which is that yes, East and West, let's be honest, those are aging buildings. Having worked at East for those years, like I know there's areas that still don't have air conditioning. I know the annex is kind of in rough shape. And when you walk into some of our high schools versus other high schools across the state that are newly renovated, like there's a difference there. And so we've got to make sure that we are putting our students and staff in the best positions to be successful. So we are having active conversations. We're actually just trying to get some our head wrapped around what improvements at East and West need to happen, what renovations need to happen. Just this morning, I was talking with our director of maintenance and saying, hey, let's make sure we get a couple different sets of eyes, meaning like some experts to go and look at those two buildings and try to pinpoint some numbers in terms of what renovations need to happen in those buildings. So I would say absolutely high schools, and even Expo, put Expo in there. And again, I think our staff are doing an unbelievable job in these three buildings that I've referenced. But when you compare a classroom, Expo or West or East, and then you go walk in the WCC, like there's a difference in terms of like just the feel, just the aesthetics. So we've got to make sure that we're giving all students equal opportunities to be in a successful learning environment. So very long-winded answer. Yes, we actually are right now asking some experts, some companies to go in and tell us what are we looking at for costs to renovate those 2 and even 3 buildings.
No, that's great. As we kind of close out on our time here, Jared, something that we like to ask all of our guests is how can we as a community, how can we best support you, best support our administration, our teachers, our schools overall? Just like we said, everybody has a vested interest in our schools. So what can we be doing for you guys? Oh,
that's a good question. That's a really good question. I would say, and I've only been back here for 6 months, so I don't know if this is a thing, but just continue to tell the positive things that are going on in our school district. Like it really takes a village, right? That whole saying. And you guys have the group here is very well connected. You have your circles, your coffee groups, your book clubs, your social media friends. Really, I encourage you to spread the good news. I mean, there's a lot of good things going on in our district, and perception plays a huge role. And so not only speaking positively and avoiding, really make sure you get the answer before you start assuming, make sure you get the right answers about what's going on. But also like if we got 1,700 employees, I say it all the time. We're the 3rd largest employer in the Cedar Valley. When you look at John Deere first, Tyson second, Waterloo Community School District 3rd. So if there's an employee who is doing something great or a staff member who's doing something great, like it doesn't hurt to tell them, right? Sometimes in general, we don't do a very good job of giving positive feedback. We always focus on the negatives, and every little bit counts. You never know whose day you're going to make. You never know whose year you're going to make. You never know whose career you're going to transform by like just taking the time to show appreciation for that person. So that's what I would say is like every little bit counts in terms of like it takes a community. Like the better our schools do, the better our community is, the better our business will be, the more we can recruit people to our community for the positions that you're trying to fill. So that's what I would say is just like always we should be working together and try to. I'm not saying nobody's trying to tear us down, right? I think we're doing a good job, but like really actively talk positively about our schools is what I would say.
Oh, that's great. And Jared, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We all know you've got a lot on your plate. You're a busy guy, and we really appreciate your time. We're glad that the school board saw your talent that night and brought you here to us, that they came to their senses. And even kind of zooming out of it, like we really appreciate your energy, your transparency, your positivity, and just your willingness to listen in your community too. we're really excited about the work that you're doing, and want to do what we can as a community to encourage you as well. So for everybody who joined us, thank you all for being here as well. It's so good to see you again. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar, so keep an eye on your inbox and on social media for that. And we hope you'll join us again next month. We host these on the first Wednesday of every month, so we'll be back on March 1st with Riverview Center, and they'll be talking about the services that they provide for survivors of domestic and sexual violence. So we look forward to hearing more from them next month. But hope everybody has a great day, great rest of your week, and thank you for being here.